very, very interesting things about the Snowfire product. We're really building a tool for executives.
Faster is not fast for everyone. Fast is fast for that company.
When you look at the market right now, there's a lot of people out there that are trying to understand what AI is.
A lot of folks ask us, why did you want to build Snowfire?
Why don't I just use a ChatGPT? Why wouldn't I just leverage that as our AI adoption for our company?
That's a reactionary response to forced tool adoption. That's not a wise move.
You should not send your corporate data to a external company that you don't have an agreement with, an MSA with, and or is not storing that data in an isolated secure data store. Billions of these queries happening daily right now where someone's leveraging an LLM using company data. And that is something that is the core of why we think there's a Snowfire outcome here. You need that in a secure, isolated data store so that it has high levels of competency, high levels of accuracy in its response, and more importantly, it stays there.
Imagination is the new currency.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Whoa, that is the quote of the day. What does that mean? Hey, Snowfire, I'd like to take a look at our innovation metrics across our business here at Snowfire, period. Please put together an overall metric that would combine all of our engineering, our product, and our customer outcomes into one metric known as the innovation score. Good morning, coming to you from Austin, Texas. We have the Snowfire leadership team here with us today. We have Matt Murray joining us from Austin, Texas. We have Stephen Van Washenova joining us from Denver, and Chris Davis joining us from Denver. My name is Greg Janung. I'm the CEO and founder of Snowfire AI. We're excited to share with you today a little bit about the impetus and the genesis of this company, where we've come from, where we are today, and where we're going, the reason for why we've built what we've built, and what we're seeing from the market. There's a lot of things to talk about in AI, and it seems to be the buzzword today. And so with each of these individual leaders and what we're bringing to the table today, we want to share with you a little bit about our journey, what we're seeing, and in general, talk a little bit about our competencies in each parts of the business. Matt is going to share with us a little bit about growth and marketing and scaling businesses and what we're seeing in AI and customer feedback loops and some of the exciting really stories and use cases that we're seeing out there. So he'll share some of that with us today. And SVW has a brilliant background in engineering. Some of the most complicated systems on the planet have been built by him and managed by him. And through his career, he's worked on some very interesting things, of which now Snowfire in the AI space is a really, really big engineering feat. We're going to have him talk a little bit about that today and really what's happening around the competency of agents and workers, and more importantly, how we pull together massive data streams for decision intelligence. And Chris Davis, who's been really with us from the very beginning, from the design and the ideation of the company to pulling together the first UI of the platform and what we wanted it to be, all the way to what it is today, supporting customers in the adaptive decision intelligence outcomes that we produce. So without further ado, let's start with the product. Let's start with the UI and let's go all the way back to the beginning. And so, Chris, I'd like you to kind of walk us through, introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your career and what's brought you here, and then let's also make sure that we kind of tell everyone why you are with Snowfire. Why are you doing this? Why now? Why Snowfire? Why now? Why you? Why us?
All right, right on. So my whole career has really been around the ability to take experiences online and technology and make it useful for people to interact with, to accomplish the goals that they want to do with the pieces of software. And so one of the really interesting things about AI specifically and the Snowfire product is that it's such a new space where there is an incredible amount of use that people can get out of AI, but it's not really adopted in an operational sense within businesses yet. They might use it for highly specialized things, or they might use an LLM to prompt something, but the operationalization of it within a business context is where I see a big opportunity. So outside of just prompting, how do you take the information that an LLM can provide or an AI can provide, and make it useful amongst a team of people to share information, talk about information, curate and interrogate together, pull reports that help people stay accountable to the things that that they've learned about their business. So I think that's really one of the very, very interesting things about the Snowfire product, is that we have an ability to do that, and not just do that within like a standard business context. We're really building a tool for executives, and that's something that is just, as we've heard from our customers and sales conversations, is a wholly unique thing. The executive layer is really, nobody builds purpose-built tools for executives. You have big tools for a department, but not for the C-suite. And not in terms of helping them have better conversations with the board, and not in terms of having, particularly AI to help them with adaptive decision intelligence as we're building it. So it's a very, very interesting space, and I think that there's a lot of room to build products that, penetrate organizations in a really meaningful way. So
is it the new top-down?
It may just be the new top-down, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's an awesome beginning to this discussion today, and in terms of what we're seeing from the demand part of the C-suite, right? Why is the C-suite needing AI adoption, AI transformation, and then AI acceleration? I think there's a lot of what you're describing there.
And they're getting a lot of pressure from their boards, which is a very unique thing about the space. It's not very often that you have boards that are demanding that a C-suite figure out how to use a technology that then puts C-suite people on their heels and saying like, well, we have to figure this out, and we don't really know what to do because it's all so new. So
yes. Chris, that's a really nice primer for where we want to head in this discussion. So as we kind of talk about, you mentioned adaptive decision intelligence. That's a really interesting thing, right? So what does that actually mean? What is adaptive decision intelligence, and how does it work for you? And how do you start to put that to play in the business to make decisions? What is the adaptive part of this? So SVW, let's kind of tap you in on this one. And from an engineering perspective, we've got a really cool patent pending on this. And so I'd like to have you talk a little bit about maybe defining what is adaptive decision intelligence, and how does that become an entire platform, and then what can you do with it, right? So I'd love to have the engineering mind talk about what this is and how it is used.
Yeah, adaptive decision intelligence is really trying to get to the core of having a proactive, full-time, real-time, always-on system that can help guide executives through business decisions. And my background is in network systems and autonomous software-defined radio and software-defined networks, and through that you have to have a complicated set of rules, and we've leveled up past that. And to Chris's point earlier, nobody has targeted executives in that space. We're really only trying to get teams to do this, individuals to have these powerful tools. And adaptive decision intelligence is trying to get executives to that space where they are leveraging tools and not having to spend all the minutia in building decks and trying to come up with a team that can be the crack squad on making decisions. Instead, they have an entire agent architecture system that will do that for them.
It's interesting to think about this. So what you're kind of describing is there, over the last 20 years or so, there's really been this business intelligence layer where you've got people and massive data warehouses and systems that are put together to deliver this, right? And then you have kind of this like intelligence layer, which is maybe a combined customized visual state. Maybe it's a Power BI or a Tableau or, these types of products. But you have people behind this that are making, recommendations to the business based upon their understanding of the business, right? So we're shifting this conversation based on what you're describing to an AI automation layer that does the processing and the analysis at scale and in real time, right? That adapts around you. So how does it adapt around you, I think, is the question that a lot of folks are asking us.
Yeah, I think maybe one of the most important parts of that is that it removes the bias to those decisions, those bias to those inputs. You know, previously an analyst could think of a situation in a different context than any other analyst. So results that you may get may be interpreted by 10 different people already before it gets to you. And those interpretations are sort of like playing a game of telephone. It doesn't necessarily make things any better to have all those hands touch it.
So based on what you're saying, it's a very interesting concept to take data that we then had, used to have to interrogate and use people to extract value. What you're describing is a system that is doing that on its own on your behalf. So it's adapting around you. Can we talk a little bit about what that means from an engineering perspective? How does that work?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it really goes into trying to understand what needs to be adapted to begin with. First, there's the psychological component to every individual in your organization, and most definitely the board members. Your C-suite, every person has a different personality and has a unique mix of interactions with other members of the board and their own team. And a lot of decision platforms don't take that into account. Then that at scale is the entire sociological aspect of your teams together trying to come to a common goal of whatever your board has set out to be. Those two important factors don't necessarily get built into the adaptive layers of business tools today. So it's a powerful tool that we have at Snowfire when we marry that with the feeds of data that we have and the goals that organizations are trying to leverage. I think that coupled with the real-time architecture that we have makes it so that the adaption is something that can happen on a micro level between individuals, between different business performance metrics, and between different goals and decisions that the organization is trying to meet.
So the system works differently. It adapts differently to a CEO versus a CFO, right? The metrics are different, the strategy's different, the data sources that usually are interrogated are different. CEO has strategy that's needed, and CFO has financial management, margin, profit components to it. They're somewhat different, but they glue together the experience in the data layer for both of those individuals to work together.
Absolutely.
But the CEO is adapting to different things, right? So market news and competitive analysis may be more important for that particular persona or that individual than a CFO who's looking for week by week, month over month margin analysis of categorizations of spend and revenue, right? So there's adaptive components for both of those users, right? Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah, absolutely. And it goes even deeper than that because that's just the personal layer of it. We also look at the aspects of the organization, the business, to find out what is the difference between a dentist's chain and a manufacturing plant. They have different needs that need to be adapted to make decisions, and taking those things into context has really been impactful for our customers.
Yeah, so banking is very different in the adaptive decision intelligence need than say retail or healthcare, right? The data sets are massively different. The news sources are massively different, but the AI is contextualizing around these users to drive them into decision intelligence as early as possible, right?
Right, yeah, faster is not fast for everyone. Fast is fast for that company. And if it's taking you a month to do something, to figure out whether or not you need to do that layer of decisions in between, that could be a week for a retail company. And that's great for them. It's really about what is good for the business.
Yeah, the early warning systems are different for each different type of business or industry. That's awesome. Yeah, great start on the engineering stuff. I think this is exactly where the users that want to hear from us, how did we build this? We get asked that so often, like, how did you guys build this? How did you build it so fast? What was the impetus of this? So a lot of folks, if I could kind of transition, I'm going to take one here on myself. Like, a lot of folks ask us, what caused you all to build Snowfire? Why did you want to build Snowfire? And a lot of it is because we saw a massive data layer in these businesses that all of us were working for in previous lives. That massive business layer was siloed, and you have sales silos, marketing silos, financial silos, customer success data silos, IT and security silos, right? We've all got security backgrounds here. So as we looked at this, these silos make it really hard to combine that data layer into a brain, into something that's the operating system of the business. And when you realize that those silos are really built for an individual executive to be able to harness their part of the business, you realize that's where we're coming from. The reason we built this was to synthesize all of that into that executive C-suite intelligence operational layer for sharing data to make better decisions. So a CRO should have access to some of the customer success data, some of the marketing data, some of the finance data, to be able to amalgamate all of that, synthesize that, to create a data mesh to make decisions from. And vice versa, CFO really wants to know why we're spending all of this money on all of these pieces of software, and why is it not a layer of intelligence for us, right? We hear that from CFOs all the time. And then CEOs, I like talking with CEOs a lot because they've been wanting to harness the data layer of the business to make decisions faster, to see the outside world coming in, to see the intelligence from the inside of the business coming in, and then to have an AI assist that in the processing of that, right? So, decision intelligence, adaptive decision intelligence is really a powerful platform to be taking the business you have today into the AI transformed future, right? This is leveraging this stuff at scale. So let's kind of turn this now to the growth engine of Matt here, Matt Murray. So Matt joins us. He's been in really complex cybersecurity sales for quite a while, and Matt is a very strategic growth mind. So I want to kind of give you an open range here to play ball with a little bit, but I'm gonna serve you a question. And hopefully you can kind of take us in the direction of what is the market saying about this? What is happening right now that is causing companies like Snowfire to grow so quickly?
Gosh, it's when you look at the market right now, there's a lot of people out there that are trying to understand what AI is and how can they harness it for their own organizations and their own growth. Yeah. And what's kind of grown, going back to my background, I have 15 years in cybersecurity on the selling side, and one of the things that we experienced and we saw was a lot of people want to have a security first mindset and being able to get to the results as soon as possible. So our whole methodology at our MDR company that we all worked at was shortening the time to detection and response. Very common for security programs or security organizations. Just think of that coming over to decisions, shortening that time to make a contextual decision to further your organization. That's very powerful. That's not something that a leader would take lightly. They want to have the opportunity to make a decision that will affect their bottom line, affect their organization as from an employee perspective, and also make the right investments as they move forward. To me, that's a lot of the reason why I came into the AI space. We're taking that leap from security. I see a lot of similarities. I think this is going to be a great opportunity for us to share the ways that we are not only innovating Snowfire itself, but innovating in working with other customers to educate and grow with this trusted advisor. Because we need people. People are going to be a part of this equation. You can't just automate everything through AI. We want to be that trusted advisor for the companies that we work with, and we want to make them better at the end of the day.
That's awesome. So each of us here has a leadership role in the company. We've talked a little bit about Matt's role in growth. We've talked about SVW's role in engineering. We've talked about Chris's role in product. Let's kind of make this a little bit more personal. What caused you to want to be a part of this? Let's go in reverse order. Matt, what caused you to want to join Snowfire, and why now? Why Snowfire? Why now? Why you?
From someone being on revenue and growth, I want to be going where the curve is starting to uptick. And to say it's only starting now would probably be a false statement, but it's still very early stages, as we all know. We're learning a lot being in this new frontier. And so that, to me, is exciting. I want to be a part of that journey with folks like you all here. The other reason is Greg. Greg and I have worked at our previous company for 4+ years, and when we were going into customers and trying to add value, I noticed real quickly customers love to talk about their data. They love to make sure that they got the most out of their investments. They wanted to be told they're doing things right, but as equally, they want to be told where could they do better. And through those type of experiences and leveraging Greg and him being on the BI team and seeing where he's taking this with Snowfire, it just seemed like a no-brainer. And ultimately, I want to be with the best and brightest as well, and I want to be the dumbest guy in the room. So I succeeded in that.
You having fun so far?
Absolutely, it's been a rocket ship already, but it's a lot of conversations and things that we're going to need to do with our customers to learn from them and understand how we can better ourselves to ultimately give them the best product out there as we move forward.
Yeah, you and I have a thing that we've been talking a lot about, which is that we will know we have won our version of the war when our customers are introducing us to new customers, right? Mm-hmm. That's the delighter that we're after as a company in general. We make some difference for you. You introduce us to others. We make it, and it's a snowball's effect, right? A Snowfire's effect.
Absolutely, and that's what's so exciting about being here. The value we're adding to the C-suite is unlike anyone else in our industry, and in a lot of ways, we're creating a new place for folks to catch up to us, because we're doing a great job right now, and we're excited to continue to add that value to that C-suite, and we got some really exciting stuff we got building as well in the future as well.
SVW, you are a very talented engineering mind. Why Snowfire? Why now? Why you? What has you so excited about what we're up to?
Yeah, I think my major influence to come on board was kind of a continuation of my career. You know, spending the last 5-6 years in cybersecurity, the time to detection is very important. However, the completeness of detection is even more important. Just knowing that an APT is in your organization isn't enough. You need to know everything about what they've done. And that breadth of detection is really something that can only be brought up at scale by AI. You know, you can build out massive teams and you can have, you know, multiple functional teams to be able to do this, but the economy of scale is through AI. And kind of piggybacking that same thought process into adaptive decision intelligence, you can't make those decisions at scale without some other tool. And I believe that Snowfire is that tool for the C-suite. They need those in-depth, well thought out, complicated, complex, and well understood decisions, everything that goes with it to be able to leverage and to level up.
Yeah. Did you just make mean time to detection a very low level value compared to mean time to decision?
Yeah, absolutely. Because even if you have a detection, you don't know what to do with it yet.
Yeah.
And that same thought process extends to the C-suite. Sure, you know that you have a problem on your manufacturing floor. You know you have a problem with a retail pair of socks. But what are you going to do about it? And what information goes into that decision, and what other alternatives have you done? If you don't have a complex metrics to understand those decisions, you're really only going by 3 different things: your head, your heart, or your gut. And this is 2025. You can't just make that claim to the board that you decided to change your manufacturing location from Bangladesh to Korea without actually having some kind of rational plan behind it. And we want to be the leaders in that space.
We're hearing from executives, to piggyback on what you're saying, I love this, because the mean time to decision now, and MTTD is now a much broader applicable business component for every executive on the planet. What you're describing is the chaos of contextualization is very hard. There's so much data from so many places in the business. There's historical data that's hiding in the darkest, deepest corner of the business that you're not querying. AI pulls all of that out, normalizes it, contextualizes it, and gives that executive the ability to be empowered with much faster decisions, much more contextualized decisions, but in a lot of ways, that executive still has that intuition that they bring to the table, that experience. They still are looking after the business. And now they're having a partner, the trusted advisor, the AI, to support them in the higher levels of fidelity in decisions. It's a really cool topic, but it's not just applicable to executives, I mean, it kind of moves into the layer below that as well. There's anywhere there's decisioning happening, right? There's an impetus for value. We support executives exceptionally well because of how we've built our metrics and how those are interconnected. And we have what we call a large metric model here, right? We've never heard anybody talk about that, but we bring our large metric model. It glues together every role, and then suddenly you can see how a CFO does view the rest of the business. They're looking at the marketing spend, they're looking at the revenue, they're looking at overall customer set. There are perspectives that an individual executive has that are very interconnected with other parts of the business. And we're starting to see how that is surfaced very easily in platforms like ours. So as we talk about that experience, I'm kind of teeing you up here a little bit. Chris, you've got an incredible mind for the experience and the overall way in which design matches up with use, matches up with the outcome, and that really is experience, right? So I want to get you talking a little bit about why you're so excited about Snowfire and, moving from what we see the world doing in terms of, Google search to a prompting window to a Snowfire. I want to talk to you a little bit about why that is so exciting for you and where you see this going and, why now, why Snowfire?
Yeah, so there's a couple of layers to the thing that really gets me fired up about this. One of them is I'm very, very interested in human psychology and what goes on in people's brains to get them to do things and make decisions about things that they need to make decisions about. And thinking about the role that companies play in developing products and enhancing lives and saving lives and everything that companies do, like the intersection of an executive's job in a company is just very, very interesting and important. And then when throughout my career, when I've been able to watch basically executives go through an evolution of what ultimately comes down to deriving meaning from data. The first iteration of trying to understand data is just looking at a graph. Like it's a higher fidelity way of interpreting what's happening in data. And then a more high fidelity than a graph is having somebody with a really smart mind to do the adaptation of the meaning from a graph, from a business intelligence perspective, and narrate the story behind the graph so that the executive really understands what they're dealing with.
Where do you find people like that?
Well, they're very hard to find, and they're the 1% of those people in roles like that. What they do is they have an intuition about how to adapt the message to the individual that they're speaking with and how to read and narrate data so that the executives understand very, very clearly what is happening, and even adapt it to the level of we're not going to talk to this person until after they've had food, because I know that they're that they're going to be more receptive because they're going to have higher blood sugar levels and they're going to feel better. So we're just going to wait till after lunch to talk about this. Or these, we'll get them in the morning when they're sharpest. And so there are many, many layers to how information can be adapted. And so I'm really excited about being able to leverage a tool like AI to do that at scale and derive that high quality meaning in a way in which it's going to be maximizing its understanding and interpretation to the executive.
Love it.
Yeah, it's all very exciting. And I also think, particularly at the stage that AI is in, I see so many similarities between AI right now and early mobile. We lived in a world before we had mobile devices, and mobile devices augmented intelligence for the individual across the board. Now we can Google anything and we have access to all of the world's knowledge in our pocket. And I see AI as having a very similar sort of path.
Yeah, that's fun to listen to because it feels like we're on the precipice of something that changes our quality of, I'm going to say quality of life. It's definitely going to change the way in which we do things, but I think it also is a massive quality shift. So if I could also answer the same question I've just asked three of you guys, I think my why is something of an experience from my career in that working in massive data layers. So I was at Rackspace with 300,000 customers and just a massive data layer. And then we went to Deepwatch and almost 100 terabytes a day of daily ingest across some of the largest customers on the planet. Looking at data has become something of a passion for me, and seeing the patterns and the anomalies and the behaviors in data sets is how we were able to make some of the most effective decisions. But I also felt the pain of building these systems, right? Building massive data warehouses, doing all of the, the Python, the R, the SQL, the joins of the data to bring that data to life, and how expensive and timely that was. Trying to find people that can do that kind of work, not only to bring it to life, but then to contextualize it for meaningful value, and then to then be able to communicate that up to the executive layer. That entire process I've just described is very hard, it's costly, it's time consuming, and in a lot of ways there are breaking points in that where if you don't build the data well, if you don't join it properly, if you don't contextualize it, if you don't communicate it, there's a lot of ifs in the work stream here that I'm describing that make it hard for executives to get that value quickly. And so I think we have an incredible opportunity to allow customers, our customers, to just send us the data, to pipe the data into a centralized system that correlates that data automatically and then allows you to ask questions of it, simple prompting, which is where I think a lot of the world exists today in AI usage. It's still a Google search bar that's now a ChatGPT or a it's a search bar, but it contextualizes different types of answers. We're still at that phase of our adoption of AI. We want to take them into the next realm of this, which is that no. It's not just about one question and one answer. It's about looking at the entire data layer and understanding where the issues live. Where are things healthy? Where are things starting to emerge as a concern, early warning systems? Where are things bad? How do I have to fix this particular thing? Where do I prioritize my time? What are the things that I have to do today to make me the best executive I can be? All right. So for me, it's about seeing the complexity of this. I call it the intelligence stack, right? And you're spending a bunch of money on tools and data, bunch of money on people, bunch of money on engineering. You're spending a bunch of money on the intelligence layer and then turning it into a communication layer. That's a lot. And I think a lot of companies have built that, and it's helped them get to where they're at. But I think it's going to shift fundamentally into send the data, make decisions. I think we're moving toward a data as decisions kind of future. And for me, that's what's most exciting is send us the data, no engineering needed. AI takes all the fields and turns it into value, and decisions are brought forth. And so that's what I am so excited to be here about, and working with talented folks who, quite frankly, are seeing what we see as the AI transformed future. November 2022, we got our first look at ChatGPT. I think there's a pre-AI, post-AI discussion here. I'm going to wrap this by saying I think there are pre-AI companies and post-AI companies where we see a psychological divide. I'm talking about sociology, psychology. I think there is a divide. Companies created after AI, companies created before AI. There's a fundamental shift that's a little harder for companies that are pre-AI. They've made massive investments, and they're feeling the pain on the margin drain on the time it takes to harness that data layer for intelligence, versus companies that are post-AI that are just ready to go. And it's a really interesting thing that we're seeing right now in the market. And so we'll talk more about that in subsequent sessions, but I think that's what we're learning as we get out into the market and grow this very quickly is you're kind of looking at these newer companies can move very, very quickly, and they're already AI minded. The pre-AI companies, they've got boat anchors that they have to figure out how to wind up or wind down technically in order to sail. And I think that's where we're headed with some of this. So,
and to add on to that too, what's interesting, if you kind of peel the onion back a little bit on what a pre-AI and a post-AI company look like, the behavior in most companies that are trying to adopt AI is all about how do we adopt it for our workforce? How do we get our employees to use AI? How do we get our employees to be faster and use more AI so that we can utilize less resources? But there's not talk of post and pre-executive AI teams. It's all about the executive saying we're going to operate the same way, but we want our resources and our employees to adopt it. And there's going to be post-AI leadership teams and pre-AI leadership teams, and they're just not going to be able to compete. So it's a top-down AI adoption that we're really
the
talking
transformation
about.
is happening.
Yeah. And top to bottom of the business.
Yeah.
Everybody is going to do it.
How long will you wait?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's an interesting question.
Well, it's also have that same C-suite have the opportunity to adopt an AI platform that's actually geared for them. And I do believe simplification is key for these folks. At the end of the day, they're managing these large teams, solving these massive problems, and they can't be doing a lot of the in the trench work. And that's one of the reasons Snowfire is so powerful. And what we do is we're doing the work on their behalf. We're educating them. We're giving them the signals of what they need to do. And trying to move that being less of a reactionary to being proactive. If you can do that and you can be proactive in your own industry, in your space, then you can start now talking about how you're beating your competition and how you guys can eventually lead into a position where you're going to separate yourself as an org.
Yeah, you're describing the evolution, though, from a search box and massive reporting and dashboarding to a system that understands your data layer, knows the metrics for your role automatically, sources the external intelligence like market news, supplier news, competitor intelligence, all into one place so that you can ask the question that matters. What do I do right now? Right? Not searching for problems or prompting a box. It's surfacing the things that are most critical, most prioritized, most ready for you to act on and decision on, and then contextualizing that, right? We're never going to remove we could, but we're not going to remove the human layer here. First of all, we want to have contextualized decisions for really great leaders to make really great decisions. And I've said this on a couple of other podcasts too. We're not going to remove the executive layer. Snowfire is not going to automatically make decisions, and if you're ready to have a good laugh, it's because we're still going to want to have someone to blame bad decisions on in the end. It's
accountability is real.
Yeah, but also accountability doesn't come through an AI to the board. Accountability comes through these executives tasked with some of the hardest roles on the planet, and we want to enable them to be superhuman, superstars at their job, and get them a lot of their time back to have analysis at scale. So.
Yeah, the wisest decisions are based on wisdom, and wisdom is not an inherent thing that every executive has or even every team member has. And so how do you go from raw data all the way up the pyramid to wisdom? That's not something that exists in pre-AI organizations. It takes years to build just to the level of knowledge.
Yeah.
And to the point of wisdom, either you are fully entrenched in that industry or you've moved on to something else. And we want to be able to bring that speed to decisions, competent, wise decisions at the scale of economy that you plug it in, you send us your data, and we are building it for you instantly.
And our wisdom here at this leadership table is security. We've been doing security for so long. I'm 20 years in it myself, and seeing the opportunity to shift into AI, bringing security competency, I don't know if it would be wisdom, but I would say competency, right, to the table is really powerful, right? AI is brand new. It's a new space. It's November 2022 is when it really hit the market, and even then people were like, should we trust this? Now we look at AI, it's very real, it's very, very impactful, and we're bringing that isolated security version of this. You get an isolated data store for your business. This is a big part of what we're seeing the market kind of shift to as well. So I've got a question. You just created a question in my mind. What's been the hardest thing for us to engineer so far? what's been, a lot of folks are like, I'm going to build my own AI. I'm going to do model context protocol. I'm going to set up my own systems. I'm going to buy AI in every single one of the silos that I have. Right? That's kind of where a lot of people are. If they're considering doing something like a Snowfire, I think they're thinking to themselves, could we build this ourselves? Right? My answer is I would love for you to do that. We wish you well. If you want to be a customer of ours and then go build it yourself, we'll give you your data, right? You can take that. So I want to serve you one on this. What's been some of the hardest engineering obstacles for us that folks should be aware of in terms of trying to build your own Snowfire?
Yeah, the gap between information and knowledge is probably one of the hardest things to put controls in place to build automatically. That's not something that can be extracted by rule sets generally. It's something that comes with hard engineering work to put controls in place that will make that possible at scale. And making the leap from knowledge to wisdom with the power of AI on the back end, that's where competent decisions come from. I think that's probably been one of the most biggest challenges. I don't know if there's anything specific.
Well, I think you're describing the emergence of what we've seen is work like agents or workers that are automatically brought to the table that no one has to build, that have very deep competency, right? So we have a supervisor agent that knows your business so incredibly well. We have a metrics agent that knows the metrics for your business and really down to the role level as well, incredibly well. We have the personalization aspect of this, that agent. We have the signals intelligence agents, which harness the outside market news 3 times a day. Almost the entire news network is basically fed into Snowfire, right? So like these competencies, when combined, for some reason I just had a Captain Planet analogy here, our powers when combined, that's what's happening, right? So the engineering that you're describing is complex because the competency is required.
Yeah, it's a little bit of trying to model experts in your field.
Right.
Which experts do I want on my team to help me make decisions?
That's awesome.
How do I do that? And then finding the right line on what those functions should do. What expert function are you the best at?
Yeah.
And how do I make it be that that's the only thing that you are concerned with?
That's a brilliant visual you're giving us, right? So you're saying you need the engineering team, you need the data warehousing team, you need the data science team. That's like the engineering layer you're going to require to build this, let alone the next layer up, which is the competency of the outputs of these agents, right? This is a massive team that's in a platform, a massive structure of knowledge in a platform that you have to find and put into these agents and train them and tune them. We just bring them to the table for you. In 24 hours, you turn them on.
Right.
Yeah. Right?
It's complex. Think about it, that's very complex what you explained. It's high engineering cost that's going to be associated with effort to it. And I think it's one of those things that we do talk about with our customers, and I think it's something we should really highlight today. I don't think we have yet.
Let's do it here. Let's do it here and now.
Let's do it. So when we're thinking about us, and the reason why we say we're focused on the C-suite is one of it is there's no engineering requirement on your end.
What does that mean? No engineering requirement.
So
let's be very clear what users are hearing here.
I'll give a stab at it. We might have to pass it over, but from my understanding, and actually from going through a few different deal cycles with our customers, think about this. Imagine a world where you can just talk to Snowfire and say, hey, these are our XYZ problems. Say we're talking to a CRO. They really want to have an understanding about how do they grow their business, how do they compare themselves to their own industry, and if they had to make a decision around performance from their team, how could we do that? All very important things as you're growing for a CRO, for quarterly reviews to the board level insights, etc.
Profit margin by industry,
exactly.
Average deal size, time to close, all of these components broken down by each of the verticals that you're targeting and where your greatest benefit for your bang for your buck is across all the data.
100%. Imagine being in the conversation with us on a call, and we just tell you, send us your data. Click this button, get the right login, and now we're going to start over in a span of 24 hours, we're going to start to contextualize what we've found in your environment.
So authenticate your data from your multiple different systems. Let's say it's like a Salesforce, a HubSpot, Google Analytics, plus all of your social network data, plus your advertising data, right? Just that's a CRO data set that I have in mind. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Okay. So now it's been sent. What do you do with it next?
Once it's been sent to us, we will be able to now contextualize, comb through the data of your own, the own investments that you've made over those years. And now the exciting part is now we take it from the external data points and the industries that you may be most focused in on. And now you start to be able to get a lot of interesting data sets and data points to be able to make those decisions that we just pointed out before. From those
Does it
decisions.
automate the metrics?
Absolutely.
So you push your data in 24 hours, you have all of your metrics for those data sources, even cross-correlated metrics available?
Yes.
Okay, so those are like places we can start and pivot from. So what if I wanted to do simulation as a CRO? What if I wanted to simulate where we're going to end up at in terms of total revenue by the end of the year or by the end of the quarter? Like, is it possible to do those kinds of things?
Absolutely.
No code required.
No code required.
So I never need an engineering team. I pipe the data in, I ask questions, I get answers. Does it provide language output, math output, graph output?
All secured.
All of it, all secured.
Yeah.
Interesting. So you're telling me that I can transform my business almost overnight by adding if I'm a CRO, the entire growth mechanic layer of the business. So what if I wanted to spend our marketing dollars a little bit more wisely in terms of maybe analyzing our existing pipeline and where we have industry verticals or demographic, maybe geo data to double down on our investments and close more business by the second half of the year to hit some numbers. Maybe there's areas where we have higher gross profit margin in particular verticals. I can do all of that? Okay. What about analyzing sellers? What about looking at pipeline propensity and the way in which they're growing? Okay, all of this.
Previously, those were all expert individuals that you either had to delegate to or task to break down that question. And so the time to value to even get a rough answer on that, one, is going to be limited by the number of people that you can contact and work on this issue.
Yes.
So the questions that you ask become infinitely more complex. What was just previously give me gross margin is now gross margin by vertical, industry, age group, product spend, seasonality, all the things that you didn't think of before because you didn't have somebody or something that could analyze that at scale.
So we bring the knowledge worker to you, is what you're saying?
Yeah, without interpretation influenced by 15 different individuals. Someone may have a bias to say, actually I want to move manufacturing back down to Georgia instead of here in Tennessee, and instead I'm going to put a little bit of bias in this answer to my C-suite to give them that extra inch to move it back.
Well, yeah, and then you even have that amplified by other things. Like what if somebody was up all night because they just had a new baby and they were tired that day, that they had to do that deep thinking analysis. Like how does that impact the ability for people to think through complicated problem sets like that? Or if they forgot their coffee or they got cut off driving to the office that day, there's a lot of things that impact our ability to, even as subject matter experts, do that work that is not inherent with the models and the way that we're building them.
So, Craig, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Would you say, in some ways, we're bringing a commonality or a common language for executives to speak to, and also around accountability?
Yes, I think we do that immediately. So a customer comes to us, and within 24 hours, they realize that they've been missing out on the opportunity to see their data not in individual silos, but in a centralized intelligence platform, right? This is really powerful. That's the aha moment that's initially seen for our customers. The second one is when you start using that layer, you start realizing that you don't want to log into all those other systems. You're no longer interested in the swivel seat or the multi-glass panes. You want the single pane of glass. That's aha moment number two. Then the deeper contextual levels here, this levels of competency, these worker experience, these deep worker experience models that we have, that we bring to the table. One of the ones that I think is so fun is that, the last 10 years for me was building metrics and answering questions that came in either via Slack or email, or I get a phone call, or it'd be on a meeting, or, the board prep, like all of these things. People would come to me with questions, and some of them were super sensitive. Like, we're gonna make a shift in the business. that would affect people's lives, okay? So like I'm having to like internalize this, bring it to life as an intelligence, layer, but then I also have to keep it secret and quiet, right? It was hard. These executives no longer have to have a Greg Genung. They don't have to have these kind of intelligence workers. They can ask that question of the data layer and no one will know. So there's security built into that, but there's sensitivity management built into that too. Mm-hmm. And so this is where the knowledge is also retained in a safe place. You can ask a question. You can't ask a person, or you shouldn't anymore. And it's provided to you, and it's a really cool. So we see that aha moment for executives. Usually that's aha moment number 3. I can ask a sensitive question and no one will know that I asked. There's many more behind this. Like for example, when you realize you'll never have to build another metric ever again, when you realize that our agents build metrics for you, you load the data, 24 hours later, it provides the metric catalog. Oh, and by the way, if you ask a question, our agent will build the metric and store it for you, so you never have to do that again either. This whole thing is a snowball's effect, and it is the Snowfire effect. And I think this is where we start to see, like as the CEO of the company, I get excited when people get excited about those kind of things.
Yeah. One thing just to go back to is the build versus buy decision that I think that a lot of executive teams are really grappling with. They're being asked by their boards to do something with AI, and they're in a position of, we don't know what to do. We should build our own AI. And there's a cycle that I've seen in business technology just over and over and over again, where the first inclination is always to build it yourself. And then you're going to have mature products that come in that then you're going to have to invest a lot of time in replacing those home-built systems. I mean, you've seen this happen with websites. When websites first came, everybody had their home-built website, and there were problems with that because they were not the subject matter experts in it. And so like their websites provided security vulnerabilities, and they spent a lot of money hiring experts to build their own custom things. And then you had systems like WordPress come out or Webflow come out. And now people don't hand code websites anymore.
No code websiting.
The same thing you saw with CRMs, where everybody built their own in-house CRM. And there was Joe that just knew how to build a database and made a CRM. And then as the company expanded and grew, they realized like this is actually a risk for us, because the way that Joe had built this CRM, it's not scaling with the business, and it didn't have best security practices in mind, because Joe, could only build it so much.
So why shouldn't someone build their own Snowfire then? You're kind of like you're moving into this zone. Like So what do we want to tell the world why you shouldn't do that yourself?
So with websites and CRMs, as examples, there's risk associated with that. But if you build a website wrong, like your blast radius is relatively small. If you build a CRM wrong, it could impact your business in a more substantial way. But it's probably not going to tank your business. But if you build something like this wrong, where you are misstoring the most valuable data inside of an entire company, and you build AI agents wrong, and they're misinterpreting things, then the risk is really, really high for a company to get this type of thing wrong. So it's not cost prohibitive to just go right out of the gate with a solution that is going to have security first in mind, where the organization isn't going to have to learn. And part of the learning process is getting things wrong and failing. Like they're just not going to have to do that this time.
I'm sure a lot of people have this question, by the way, too, is why don't I just use a ChatGPT? Why wouldn't I just leverage that as a resource, as our AI adoption for our company?
Right, that's a reactionary response to forced tool adoption. And that's not a wise move. Back to the website. You just have to have a website. Why do I need a website? Yeah. Why do I need AI? Those fundamental questions, sure, you can think of it from that perspective, but what you're doing is you're kind of dumbing down the tool into only a chat interface. And that's not the use of it. That's not the point of it. So you get these executives that think, well, we'll just build this ourselves. It is a worthy endeavor to do and a fascinating thing to engineer. However, you're coming at it from the perspective of just trying to put that square peg in a round hole, not really understanding why you're doing it.
I see a couple of opportunities here. There's like maybe 3 avenues. The first one is you should not send your corporate data to a external company that you don't have an agreement with, an MSA with, and or is not storing that data in an isolated secure data store. You don't want to do that. We're seeing that happen across every enterprise right now. There are billions of these queries happening daily right now where someone's leveraging an LLM using company data. And that is something that is the core of why we think there's a Snowfire outcome here. You need that in a secure, isolated data store so that it has high levels of competency, high levels of accuracy in its response, and more importantly, it stays there. We do not want our corporate data, financial, sales, I mean, any of it. We don't, I mean, think about healthcare. You don't want any of that kind of data being put into an LLM. That's part 1 of this. Part 2 of this is that when you realize that you want to build your own AI for inside your company, you then have to pull together this expertise layer, this wisdom layer that you described. This has to be pulled together. So you got to have the engineers, you got to have a data environment, you got to have the competency, and you got to be able to string all of that together quickly. And when you realize that like the bigger that obstacle is, the more you have to like pare it down and say like, okay, the agent's going to do just this. And then you have just like this little competency agent that does one little thing inside your company. And guess what? That's what you're being provided now to stay in the ecosystem or the silo of these other providers. So your CRM data, and I'm not going to name the big one here, but stay inside of our system. We're going to give you another AI. So you're going to get charged for that AI that just stays in that system. And then you've got the financial system. Here's an AI, you're going to stay in this silo. And then, you know, just it goes on and on and on. And so this domino needs to be knocked, this entire domino string needs to be knocked over, and it all needs to be blended. Yeah. So do not send your data to a LLM, part 1. That's not the way to do this. Let's build an isolated data store and secure that data and do this with conscious intention around the value of our company's data. Part 2, don't build it yourself, because what you find out is that you need to really have wide a breadth of competency. And if you don't have that, then you really have just one little competent worker, and that's really an expensive endeavor, right? That's expensive. And the final piece of this is that as you look at what you're really looking for, your outcome is speed, your outcome is growth of your business, you know, greater margin and profit outcomes in your business, and happier customers, right? So like you really technically need agents that fulfill those competencies in the business. We would urge you, as I look into the camera, we would urge you to forego that. Let us install a Snowfire platform and give you that experience overnight. Let's start edging into that. And if your board's asking you for AI transformation, it's a very low risk opportunity to transform using a Snowfire. Load your data, move to decisions, right? And you're doing that in a secure, isolated data store. We bring the competency of the workers to you, and you don't have to spend all that money on engineering and or wait that amount of time for that engineering to be delivered. I think that's the pitch, right? That's where we're headed with all of this. Yeah. Why would you do this yourself, right? Why would you take this on?
The commercially available LLM situation is really interesting, and there's so much to unpack. You know, if you're a company who wants your employees to be more familiar with AI, and the response is, we'll just get them ChatGPT licenses, and we'll have training on how to prompt. You know, from a security perspective, there are a couple things that people try to think about where, you know, do we have controls over what people are putting in there? Like, are there programmatic ways to stop people from putting sensitive company data in there? And then the other tool is a policy. So like, we just tell everybody, you know, don't put financial forecasts into ChatGPTs or a commercial LLM, but people make mistakes, and they rarely listen to it, or they might forget and have a lapse of judgment. And the risk from those types of situations for a company is that it goes back into the training data of these models, and every release has more and more training data. And what ends up happening with the training data is that then leaks into the hands of other people. And there's instances of this where commercially available LLMs have trained off of New York Times articles, and people are able to verbatim get those articles through these LLMs. And there was a big lawsuit about that because the New York Times is like, that's our intellectual property. You can't do that. But if you have somebody that takes a financial statement and puts it into a commercially available LLM, and it has the name of the company and the dates of those financial figures, the next time that training gets upticked, somebody theoretically could say, what's Apme Corp's annual revenue for 2025? And the LLM is going to say, oh, well, we have that data. Here you go. These are the exact numbers.
Yeah, I mean, if you send it your CRM data, it'll do more than that.
Right.
Like finding revenue is easy. It'll actually tell you like the customer segmentation, the demographic analysis, the actual profit margin per customer. Like that's not information I want an LLM to have
loss
about.
fields. Yeah, I mean,
Bingo.
It's all
Who the top sellers are.
Yeah.
However, that's the information you want to put in your own isolated instance
Bingo.
to
Yes.
make those decisions. So even if there's security companies out there that can help restrict and provide security on that, it still doesn't solve that problem.
So customers are listening to this. Users right now are listening to this conversation, and they're saying, well, I can get that information out of my sales CRM. Like I can get that there. Yes, you can. You have to build the dashboards. You have to build the reports. You also are going to get a single source view on it, right? So then you have to buy something like a Tableau if you're going to do that, or a Power BI, a combination front end system. You have to have that be built. But here's the bigger kicker. You're only able to look at that isolated data layer. That's a CRM data source. You can only get the data from that particular source. What you really want to be able to do if you're a CRO in this case, because we're talking a lot about revenue intelligence here. This has been a really cool revenue intelligence conversation. I want to pivot to my social data, and I want to use my social data to impact my revenue outcomes. I want to use my Google Analytics and web traffic data. I want to look at what's coming to us, where we have that. And oh, by the way, I want to then marry the three of those. How is my marketing and social data impacting my website traffic? Where are the conversions being seen? How does that impact our bottom line and growth? Are there things like, by the way, we think about this a lot here at Snowfire, right? We're growing this business. Where are our demographics? Where are our buyers? Where are the cities? Where are the industry verticals? Who are the executives? What do they come to our website and do? How does that turn into opportunities that are either meetings, demos, trials? What do those customers end up looking like? What do the happiest customers look like? Right?
Yeah.
These are questions that you want to have answered, and you have to have people and pivots between a massive amount of systems to get these answers prior to Snowfire.
Yeah. One major win, I think, the current adoption pattern for LLMs and those types of interfaces is to cut individual accounts for folks. And those people don't have context across their teams.
Bingo.
So your executive might be talking about gross margin, and also your CMO is talking about gross margin, but from two different data sources, and those two people are not working
Bingo.
together. They are doing isolation work and trying to solve the problem themselves. We bring the collaboration aspect together between those individuals and set the context so that you know that there's someone that can do this work for you, or that there are other people that are working on the same problem. That's not something that you want to try to tackle on your own.
When you say collaboration, what can you define that in Snowfire? How do we make that accessible to our customers?
So I think the collaboration component is really important because you've loaded all of your business data, but a finance individual is not going to want finance information available to all users. So we have very deep roles-based access controls in the platform. That's the first one here. So security is paramount. Now you have the ability to open up data sources to other people. So if you have a sales team, you might want them to have access to marketing data so that they can do things that they weren't able to do before, like understand their market, their region, understand the demographic of the customers that they serve, right? How do you get more from the existing data set? So that's an interesting example. What about HR, right? What about HR data? That's very sensitive data. Finance, HR, and security data are oftentimes some of the most sensitive data sources. So, in your organization, you get to decide how that data layer becomes collaboration. Can HR look at finance? Can finance look at our HR? We're going to be moving to a place. So right now we have roles-based, source-based access controls. We have in our vision, and I don't like selling things down the future, but we've already decided as a company that we're going to have field-based access control at some point down the line with this product where, you may want to open up HR data and finance data, but there are fields inside of those applications that you will limit for everyone, right? Mm-hmm. This is where it gets very, very granular, but the AI can then enable every human being to its fullest potential, and that becomes beautiful. Now that's the system. Let's talk about what's happening in businesses today real quick. Have you ever prepared for a board meeting? Every quarter, everybody stops what they're doing for 2 weeks. All of the different teams across the entire business pull together their intelligence, they send it up to the executives, and it's a very weird feeling because that executive is getting answers from revenue intelligence, marketing intelligence, financial intelligence, customer success ops. You can see these rev ops, marketing ops, fin ops, these teams are all working from different data sources. They all surface up different narratives. And then the executive layer has to harmonize that narrative. This is often why you see in some of these companies, a chief of staff will sit over this and help pull that together so that the CEO, CFO, CRO, and board reporting executives can have a harmonized message. That's a very complicated piece, but that's the communication and collaboration piece that I think when you look in bigger companies that have boards, this is a dream scenario to fix that problem, and it's very expensive.
And the collaboration and operationalization of all of this is so important, and that's one of the big drivers for a very important product decision to not charge for users, because that is the unlock there. Like we want people to collaborate and work out of the same system without constraints around licensing and such. Like we need everybody to work from the same sheet and have access to the same metrics and data transparency. With the caveat that they're able to see that. And
so are you saying that AI is like AIR, air, everyone should have access to it?
Yes.
It's an interesting concept, right?
Yeah.
The future of the workforce being fully enabled is the difference between an R and an R not.
Yeah.
I think so. See what I just
There
did
you
there? That was
Yeah.
fun. But it's a very interesting concept. We're all breathing. We all want to be enabled. We all should be enabled. AI is available. The adoption's available. Why not distribute it in that value set for the entire workforce layer to have it?
Yeah, you would never deny your employees a calculator. Why would you deny them the most advanced
That's a great example.
tool on earth?
Yeah.
That's a great example. All right, let's change the vibe a little bit here. Let's have some fun for a couple minutes. We've had a really good discussion so far about the market, why we're here, talking about what we're solving problems for. We're addressing the pain points. We've had a really good discussion that's very much tangible for the listeners. Let's talk a little bit about some of the fun stuff. So I want to go around the table, round robin, and throw out your favorite metric. What's your favorite metric in the business? What if you had only one metric and you wanted Snowfire to signal only one metric most of the time, what would it be? So I'll start. I love the new metric that's coming out that is no longer MRR or ARR. I love the new metric of revenue per employee. I think that the rule of 40 in software companies that existed was a cool metric, but I think it's also been shifted. I think we've shifted away from that. There's this new thing of 3-3-2-2, which is the growth, the doubling and tripling effect of businesses and how you grow companies. So we've seen those exist, but I think what happens when you see rule of 40 and what you're going toward, 3-3-2-2 and that methodology, I think you're actually seeing the evolution now of the market saying, how small can you keep your company and yet grow it to as large as possible? I am fascinated with the revenue per employee discussion on this planet. Why? I think it's largely AI enabled. I think the AI multiples are there. I think it's an incredibly cool conversation. So that's the one that I find now post November 2022 is really in play. Companies that are post AI are doing incredible things. We talk about the 10x worker. We talk about the 10x executive. It's a really cool time to be able to do more with less. But also we get our time back to do the things that quite frankly are very fun. Build, create, strategize, humanize. We get to do cool things. So revenue per employee for me.
I think the piggyback on that is probably innovation per employee.
Yeah.
Once you unlock the ability of everyone to be able to harness these tools and to be able to offset the mundane, the thing that's left over is your own creativity and how you can grow the business. So as a reflection of revenue, how are you innovating the company to get to that point? What
How do you
doing
score?
differently?
How do you score that? What does that metric look like?
There is no single formula for it. It's unique to every organization, but those complex multivariable formulas, those are things that Snowfire excels in. And not only across one particular tool or one particular user, across all of your tools.
Yeah.
And so you can get very creative with how you define innovation. Is that number of commits per day for a developer? Maybe one variable for it. Is that the same thing for an executive? Definitely not. But they have that opportunity to show where innovation comes from, what their best output is, and how that can grow revenue per employee.
And
I cannot help myself. I've got Snowfire pulled up right now, and I'm going to ask it this question. I'm going to ask it a very specific question, which is, how do we calculate and or bring together a metric for the business that is innovation per employee? And I'm going to do that right now because I think this is really neat because you're looking at a collaboration or a combination of metrics to produce that. Let's see what our system says.
Yeah, and what you're describing is what we call fusion metrics that are fused from multiple data sources, and these are new ways of measuring different types of activities in companies that are non-standard but extremely useful and customized to a company. And I think that the creativity in figuring out now that you can measure anything you want and invent metrics. Like, what are you going to actually measure? Like, what
it's
are the
no
things?
longer like the old. It's no longer your daddy's metrics, right? Like these are the combined things that you want to pull together, and the AI can kind of mathematically amalgamate, if that's the word, I guess. But it will pull those together and create new. So let's do this really quickly. Hey, Snowfire. I'd like to take a look at our innovation metrics across our business here at Snowfire, period. Please put together an overall metric that would combine all of our engineering, our product, and our customer outcomes into one metric known as the innovation score. We'll let that run and see what it comes up with. But that's what you're really describing, right? Is the combination of the points of the business that are the innovation of the company.
Right, and that kind of cuts through and makes those things transparent across organizations. Previously it was a top-down approach where every employee is measured against their own metrics. And it's no longer just that. It can't be just your employees being the most efficient or the most commit forward or the most innovative. It's everybody in the organization. How are C-level executives measured in that same range?
What if that's as equally financial as it is human? Like people love building cool stuff. I mean, we all talked about our why. I know yours for sure, right? We're really wanting to spend our time in this life that we're given here to build cool things. Like engineers are builders are engineers, and we want to put our time into cool stuff, right? So I think that's as financial, as growth, as engineering as it is human in terms of like, I love that answer. We'll see what it comes up with here. It's constructing a brand new metric as we're talking. How cool is that? So revenue per employee, innovation score? Okay, all right. Chris, what do you got? What's your favorite metric? What comes to mind for you that you are really interested in keeping the pulse of?
I would love to have a metric that measures the feeling of magic in the product that we're creating. If each one of our customers can literally feel like they are interacting with something that is so advanced that the best way that they can describe it is magic, that's something that I think would be really, really an interesting fusion metric to come up with. Through the lens of these fusion metrics, like I think that's a new competitive landscape for a business, is to be able to start to measure these things and be creative about what matters the most for that business. Like you're always going to have margin, you're always going to have growth, you're always going to have to deal with EBITDA. But outside of those, if you have all of these companies that are only measuring the same, like you said, your grandfather's metrics, it's going to be difficult for them to compete. Like they can compete on features and other things, but when you talk about like how your business is organized, you just have a whole new set of things that you can come up with to compete against.
This conversation that you've just thrown is interesting, because when you realize that you can send data to Snowfire and it will produce the metrics, it will automatically produce your grandfather's metrics.
Yep.
You never have to rebuild your grandfather's metrics again. But when you realize that what you're actually saying is that because you've sent all of these different types of data sources, there's a fusion component of this where the fields are combined to create new things.
Yep.
One of my favorite examples when we started building this company was, can I look at things like authentication data paired with expense data from individual sellers, paired with pipeline, paired with closed won revenue, okay? We pivoted from an authentication source to a financial source to a sales source that has closed won and a sales source that has pipeline. And you can say across these particular sellers, let's say you have a massive sales team. Let's say you have 1,000+ sellers. You can look at how often they're logging into and what they're using. You can look at what they're costing the business, not only in salary, but in the applications they have access to, and the expenses that they run to generate that pipeline to then generate that amount of closed won business. And then you can start to model that and say, what does good look like? Can we find more individuals? And oh, by the way, in our first 30, 60, 90 days, what does the model of what good looks like? So that we can find sellers that we can grow the business as fast as possible with behaviors and methodologies that have already been proven repeatable. So like this is the new way of thinking. So you're describing your answer is, I would like to be able to combine my grandfather's metrics.
Yep.
So your metric should be new fusion metrics. That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay. So Chris's favorite metric is new metrics that don't yet exist. That's awesome. That's a great answer for a product leader. Yeah, that's very cool.
The invention of new metrics.
That's very cool. So revenue per employee, boring. I think you guys just made my stuff
Grandfather
super
metric.
right? Yeah, super boring. Technology innovation score. Metrics yet not in existence.
Yep.
Freaking awesome.
You follow that up.
You don't. You know what? You don't. But you could try. Because in growth, metrics are everything.
100%. And one that comes to mind, I guess it's not a favorite metric. I think anything when we're talking about forecasting and revenue and in investment, it's massive for us when we're trying to grow our business, and for any customer that's trying to grow theirs. But I just know we went through an example with one of our customers to look at per rep that was a part of their organization, how much they've brought into the business from a revenue standpoint. Then we were able to correlate that data to say what was the top industry those reps were selling into, if there was correlation there, and what type of product or solutions that they were selling as well. And correlating that, we were able to get an output of performance, and the data was interesting because there was assumptions that one would have, that you would assume that the rep that was selling the most in that organization, that they were the clear-cut number one. But there's some interesting data points around the second and third, and where they're expanding and where their investment has been. So there's an endless amount of data.
Well, so your answer is fusion too, then. But you're talking about multi-level metric analysis. You're talking you're talking about stringing together metrics that provide really deep understanding of the business. So that's not a metric, that's an experience of using multi-level mathematics, multi-level reasoning.
As somebody who's been on the revenue side, typically don't have the opportunity to get in the weeds with too much cutting edge technology. But man, I'm becoming a data geek in a lot of ways now.
It's fun, isn't it?
You have that ability to do that now. Which before you would have to ask the Gregs of the world, the Chris's, the SBWs to get to that number, and someone who's not, traditionally in technology as a technology, an engineer myself, being able to have that ability, it's becoming
with a natural language model. Just ask a human question and get an incredibly metric, accurate, multi-layered description in language, as well as a graph, as well as the metrics, the numbers, the whole thing, right?
As long as you know how to ask the question.
Well, isn't that the plague of life?
No, that's the grandfather's way of thinking. That's the pre and post AI world that we live in.
Say more.
The challenge of describing your situation, as an individual worker, you could float by and keep doing the thing that you have been doing for 20 years and keep your job. And that is coming to an end very rapidly.
Interesting.
AI is getting you to a place where you can ask a simple question like, what is my ARR? But you could ask it in so many different ways that would give you new value that prompts you to rethink how you think and how you phrase questions and how you interact with the individuals on your team and everyone else in your life to level up.
This is a part of what the world wants to hear from our team, right? This is an incredible discussion. So here's what Snowfire says about the combination of both of your answers. Snowfire says, based on the focus of the innovation of the company, there are features and combinations of things that drive both happy customers and AI innovation, and they should be paired. There are 3 key components of which we would create to combine this metric. First is customer success metrics, feature adoption rates, customer satisfaction scores, and time spent on AI-powered features that are new to the world. It's saying that's a really unique piece. 2, technical innovation metrics, things like the number of AI and ML features that are deployed, so net new AI and ML engineering outcomes. Algorithm performance improvements, and system response times. So that's things that are high-level engineering that are giving back time in an AI experience. That's a very interesting piece. And 3 is business impact metrics, revenue from AI-powered features, customer retention rates, problem resolution efficiency scored by AI. To implement all of this effectively, we want to set up event tracking, AI-related feature tracking, we want to implement customer satisfaction surveys, and we want to track feature usage patterns. Now it's asking me, what would you like us to do next?
Well, I want to put that on my 101 for next quarter.
That's great, right?
You know what I'd like to do next?
Yeah.
Make a commitment to the board that those are the things that as a competitive advantage we believe are the most paramount to the company. And have continuous reporting on it so that we drive those numbers and drive those metrics in the way that we want to drive them.
That's awesome. Okay, so we have revenue per employee compared to the other answers. Technology innovation score. Metrics not yet created. And what you're saying is multi-step function metrics strung together for the answers I needed today. Did we get it correctly?
I think we got it.
Our system does all of this today? Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
The time is now. The time is now. I think it does come back to, you do have to ask good questions, right? So I don't know about you guys, but growing up as a young guy, the questions I always asked were like, where did I come from? Why am I here? Where am I going? Like life questions, right? But we want to think very creatively with AI as well. We want to ask, what data, we want to think too. What data has the answers, right? Can we help the AI look across a scale of data? So in Snowfire, one of the brilliant things is that you can kind of ask a question without too much direction, and it will still scrub the entire data layer, right? Now that's important because it takes a little bit more time to do that, but the accuracy is there and you get deeper enrichments, right? So there's a benefit to this. You want to talk about thinking about your time. So what period of time do you want this answer, right? And I think, we see a lot of executives come in and say like, show me revenue show me revenue or give me a revenue update. And it's like, well, okay, where do you want it from? Like, what's the revenue update in terms of the data you're interrogating? What's the timeline? You can give more granularity. And we're finding that the world doesn't necessarily need to be trained on prompt engineering. They just need to think more critically about the questions that they're asking.
Yeah, and as long as you understand you are the thought leader in that conversation, but also have the willingness and the openness to say, I have these preconceived assumptions that we're going to go through this. I'm going to ask this same Snowfire, in this case, what am I not thinking about?
Yeah.
How do we make this better? And I think that's really where the power comes into. It's expanding on what you already think you know to the gaps that you don't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And if you're doing that, you're going to be very effective. Other people aren't doing that today.
Yeah, imagination is the new currency.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Whoa, that is the quote of the day. What is that? What does that mean? What does that mean? What do we do with that statement?
Any individual, any organization is limited by the amount of imagination that they have in the people that they employ. And if you are incentivizing your people to be imaginative and to innovate, then you have a clear competitive advantage over any other organization around you.
I go to marketing right away.
It's brilliant.
When I think about it, in our space, when we were in the MDR space, was creativity, imagination, marketing. How many times did we talk about marketing won the day?
Mm-hmm.
There's so many different providers out there. Everything sounded the same, but the one that was just a little bit different was the one that was the leader.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you're absolutely right. You're onto something.
That's a cool statement too, because we want our executives to come up with innovation. We want them to come up with new questions that drive new metrics across sources that have never been combined. They've never had the opportunity to do that. And we want them to go on multi-step function journeys where you're getting to something because it was derived from the previous question, right? These levels of imagination are really critical. Mm-hmm. When you said that, what actually came to mind for me is, how do I ask a question with my imagination that elicits the answer the fastest?
Right, to free yourself up from the embarrassment of even having that question in the first place.
Yeah.
The AI is not going to judge you on whether or not you think something.
We don't know. We don't know if it is. Yeah.
Ideas are only
Remember that
crazy
question you
until
asked me
they're
10 years
proven.
ago? That was really dumb, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I love that. Imagination is the new currency.
Right. You want an organization that's full of imaginative, innovative people that are pressing forward, thinking about it when they're sleeping, and waking up in the middle of the night and prompting, how do I figure this one thing out that it might be a total pipe dream, but if I put in a little bit of work, a little bit of imagination into it, that could be a whole new revenue stream. That could be a whole new driver.
Is that why customers also call us a lot? Right? Can it do this? Can we do this? Like, they have the imagination and they just need validation, right? Sometimes I feel like we answer a lot of can it questions.
Yeah, well, a lot of it's curiosity. I mean, one of the benefits that we're gaining in the commercial models is people have the ability to see what a commercial model can do, and then they want to take that innovation and that capability into their business. And this is, just a really awesome opportunity because they can play with it. Like I think that LLMs today, if anybody remembers like AOL's role in the internet, there were the majority of
Frisbees.
Yeah. The overwhelming majority of people in the early 2000s correlated AOL with the internet. That was their doorway. Like, they didn't even know that you could do browsing outside of AOL. They didn't know that the whole world existed of the internet past this doorway. And I think that LLMs today are the exact same way with AI, where there's a lot of conflation, but people can experience it and then in a consumer way, and then they bring it into the business. And we've seen this again. This is just a business pattern where for a big part of my career, there were a lot of people that were saying, like, business applications can suck. They can have horrible experiences. Like, these are just business users. We can out-train, whatever. And then when the iPhone came and people had consumer-grade applications where they're like, this is beautiful experience. This stuff works really well. Like, I want this in my business too. Like, this is the same pattern, where it's like you go to an LLM and you start to get creative and see what it can do. And you're like, well, I want to do this in my business too. And I'm not going to have to lower my bar of expectations. Like, this should work in a consumer capacity for my business.
So I have something I want to switch the conversation up a little bit. I'm just curious to get you all's feedback, or y'all's, or whatever. Y'all?
It's Texas.
Yeah, y'all's
feedback.
Yeah, y'all's feedback. So just come to mind, because we're come from the space, right? We think about how people have now taken siloed investments from their data side of the house, and they were trying to consolidate to SIM technologies, right? Then the next thing, people are now building, or in the process, I think a lot of people are trying to do it themselves and building these massive data lakes. Where would Snowfire fit in on this? Like, how would we support somebody that has made that investment and now they got it all in one place, or majority of it? How do we make sense of that?
Yeah, most of our customers have a data lake, a data warehouse, or a lake house. There's all these like things that are I'm hearing now. So what you have is you have a problem. You have a problem because you spent a lot of money on that, and it still is not giving you the outcomes that you really want from your business. So our answer to this is very simple. We take every piece of the data from your business and make it available for you to send to us. Everything from spreadsheets to the thousands of different SaaS applications that you have that have APIs, to the hyperscalers and cloud providers and data warehouses that you have. Data is what we do. We don't see these as different applications. What you really have to as a customer, and as you're listening to this, what you really have to see is that this company, Snowfire AI, doesn't see individual applications the way that human beings do. We don't see a finance app or a marketing app or a sales app. We see an entire combined set of fields that then become harnessable to create metrics, to create signals, and to create decisions from data, fused data, innovation data, multi-step function data, to grow your business and harness margin, right? So when you're sitting there thinking, we've invested, we're a pre-AI, pre-November 2022 company, we've invested in data warehousing, we've spent so much, great, that's awesome. Let's take it to the next level. Let's layer that in with an AI. Let's start looking at all the other things that you didn't send to the data lake and put that in there as well, right? This becomes this knowledge layer, this brain of the business. I think we are moving toward being able to say it's the operating system of the business. So to Chris's comment previously, I love to ask a question of I meet with CEOs a lot. It's kind of CEO to CEO stuff, but I like to ask a thought-provoking question. What is the CEO software? What is it? What comes to mind? So you're probably sitting here thinking like, yeah, what is the CEO software? What we usually hear is Salesforce. Nope. No, it's not. Salesforce is your CRO, CRM data. It's for your revenue part of the house. Yes, it has a lot of information, and yes, you're probably using it a lot, but it is not built for you. NetSuite or my QuickBooks. Well, that's not that either, right? That's the finance data that helps you guide that financial part of the business, but it was never built for you as CEO. And then finally, once you realize that someone's like, oh, there is really not any software, they go something along the lines of like spreadsheets. And I'm like, wow, that's a terrible answer. You actually don't, you want to take that one back.
Back to AOL days.
Yeah. You want to take that one back. And then when they realize what we're really talking about now is that this type of platform is your iPhone. It's the evolution of the iPhone value of having everything in your pocket to the intelligence layer of having all of the answers in your pocket. And it's a really fundamental understanding. When customers finally internalize that reality, that's when the transformation begins. That moment forward, it is no longer, it is seeing something you cannot shake. And I think it's a really important part of what you're asking here. All right, so we've gone from why are we doing this to what is adaptive decision intelligence to how do you layer your data in and load your data and get started in 24 hours to what does that produce for you and what can you do with it inside the application, inside your business, inside yourself. Let's take the final step here. Where is this headed? What does data delivered as a decision, what does that mean, right? What does that mean that I don't need the engineering? Like when you get all of this done and you deploy Snowfire, what do you actually get? Okay, let's talk about this in the form of CEOs. What do they get? I'll take that one. Let's talk about this in the form of CROs. What do they get? Let's talk about engineering and product. What do leaders that are fundamentally influencing their businesses and those roles get? And I'm happy to handle CFOs as well. But what do our customers get? And I'd like to start with this. What is a signal? So in my background, signals intelligence was used for military applications. Generals of the commanding armies, the Navy, the Air Force, they needed to know that the recommendations that they were being provided were the final answer, and that they could make a go or no-go decision based on that. That is signals intelligence, and it's OSINT, it's HUMINT, it's these intelligence components, the intelligence apparatus wrapped into a decision. I mean, military is the best at this. So we have this thing called signals intelligence, and it's for executives to kind of have a go, no-go decision, right? And that's where we're headed with this. So for me, I'll start the definition. For me, signals are the contextualized intelligence components of the business with as much information available to me as an executive to make a decision. And that may change tomorrow, but the signal of today has as much information as possible for today's decision.
Well, when I look at signals and what we're providing, it is giving, in our case, our CRO, we'll start with the CRO. It's giving that CRO the 1 to 3 things or more, at least the way I like to look at it, it's the top things that they need to be concerned with in that day. And they can be able to address and bring in the right people to be able to get to an outcome that they desire. Sometimes that signal can be hard to look at and to be able to accept, but the reality is it is reality for them. The other thing though too, if I think about signals and how it would help CROs, it's really around the revenue analysis. I think it always ties back to the revenue, obviously, for the CRO. Growth. And if they're not having to do the research on their own, and they can have something with the Snowfire guiding them to be able to get to these decisions faster, where it's all back to this decision.
Speed.
And be able to adapt faster, leveraging this type of technology. That's the end goal. And CROs are concerned with let's increase our revenue, reduce expense, and let's make sure we're making a very smart decision. So next time the board meeting comes around, they have all the checks off the box for them, and they don't miss anything.
You're describing a world where this week was different than last week, and next week will be different than this week. You're describing a world where the adaptive piece of this is providing the intelligence at scale to do everything to maximize growth.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
One of the things that I love about that answer is the power veiled inside of that, which is that I want to be able to know very quickly where things are working and where they're not.
And simply.
Simply, yeah.
I think that's simplified is a huge
so
part of this.
what would a contextualized, simplified signal from Snowfire look like for a CRO? Just describe a couple of use cases you've seen that customers love so far. There's 3 examples that we have, right? So you look at an existing customer who did X amount last year and has already 1.5 to that, so they're already at 100% of target and beyond. You look at the time savings that comes from this. You look at the overall ability to determine what systems you're going to keep. Yep. You look at the ability to double down on particular investments, either in people, in software, or in markets. Yep. I think all of this.
So historical inputs that we already have knowledge in. Also, we're taking the external piece of this as well. Then now we're able to say, hey, from this point in time, the revenue that we had is now we're on the right path. Like we're seeing that we did focus on this industry, call it healthcare.
Yes.
We've put a number of marketing dollars into to really bolster that effort, and now we actually have proof that it worked. That we have a point. Hey, this is something we potentially can replicate, or it could be the other answer. Maybe this wasn't the right route, and now the market's changing, which it is at this type of a hyper rate.
We have an existing customer, CRO, who they sell security. They sell security products and security services. And they chose us because we're a secure, isolated data store for their data. So it's kind of like it's a good fit. They like that. It was natural for them. So CRO also gets signals like market news, competitive news. So we actually got a signal. We were on the line with them the other day, and there was a signal that came in that's brand new. We hadn't seen it. They hadn't seen it. And it was a company that had been breached. And we took that signal, and it was a healthcare company. We put it into the AI. We interrogated it. We asked it what we could do with this to help grow our business. And it produced the email to send to the chief information security officer, the contextualization of why this is important, how their business could help. And it really did a classy job of taking a breached company, which in this world it would be called like an ambulance chasing activity, and turning that into a partnership to help get them beyond this critical time. So that's the kind of stuff as well. So that's not even like a signal from the data inside the business. That's a signal from outside the business.
Then that in that use case, we're flipping it though, because now you press yes, this is a concern, or this is something we want to address as an organization. You press the button of saying how would we now move forward? How would we leverage what we've done in this space to help support this customer?
Yeah.
So the signal is kind of it's the what side of the seesaw are you on?
SVW, what is signal to noise ratio? What is that from your engineering mind? How do we help take massive amounts of data, which a lot of people consider it as noise, and condense that down into value that we call signal? Like, how does that work from an engineering perspective?
Yeah, despite our best efforts, information overload is a consistent thing for every individual. And individuals and organizations that are tasked with running them are just bombarded with it day in and day out.
Minute by minute.
Minute by minute, yeah. And not only that, but you can't keep up with it. It's just not realistic. You need some system that can bring you the cream of the crop of the things that you should pay attention to that are outside of your sphere of influence, that are outside of your control, that you didn't even think to remember to take care of, to keep track of, and to distill those down to things that you need to have an actionable item on. This breach example is the perfect opportunity for that. That may have come from a Twitter feed that you didn't even know about, and is an unconfirmed source, but that expectation that there should be some action that we take on this, either for our behalf or for our customers, is not something that exists today. You have to have multiple systems that stitch all of that together. We can do that for you right out of the box.
It's so cool, isn't it? What's the experience of this? What's the experience of taking military-inspired signals and then applying that to corporate citizenry in the executive layer? What is the market saying about this, and your thoughts as a product and experience leader?
Yeah, I think there's multiple things that come to head when we think about the signal and the noise. And one of them, what I would categorize as what you were describing is what you often talk about, which is we just don't have enough time to stay on top of everything, to sift through the noise. And if you think about decisions as like a pyramid in an organization, the people at the bottom have many, many, many tiny decisions that they have to make with, relatively small risk and impact to the business. And as you get higher and higher up in an organization, you have that C-suite layer where the amount of decisions that they have to make on a day-to-day basis is smaller than types of decisions that the workers have to make, with absolutely outsized consequences to the business. And so with the inability to have infinite time in the world to just sit there and follow up on all the data sources and sift through the noise, like the distillation engine that we have with signals is really, really important to help understand what's the most important thing you need to do. Because there could be a million things happening in a business, there can be a million things happening outside of a business, and without the time to understand all of that and distill it, is a hard job. So we make that easier.
How do we make that easier?
So this is where the adaptive decision intelligence piece comes into play, because you could have one signal that inherently means that different people in the business have to respond in different ways to that. So if there is a chip manufacturer shortage that is on the other side of the planet, that we detect in the news, we can look into an instance of a CRM and we can say, hey, we have customers that are in this part of the world where the chip shortage is. So from a product perspective, how do we, think about, do we offer them discounts because we understand that they're in a time of need and we want to retain their business? From a customer experience perspective, like how do we respond to that signal and reach out to those customers and provide a level of care to them so that we retain their business? From a strategic perspective, is this an opportunity for us to gain more business in that area with a specific message? Like, how do we market to it?
Open up a new supplier?
Right. So it's one signal that, is a very, very important signal to people in the business that adapts.
So are these recommendations that are coming in? Like, what does this look like?
Yeah. So it's surfacing what the signal is, and then making it human readable, and describing the impact of the business, and depending on who you are, adapting what the recommendations are for you that you can assign to yourself.
So you're describing, I get a signal. It could come from inside the business or outside the business, like news versus metrics, right? Just kind of making it simple. Then I get contextualization of it, and I get understanding of it, which is like in normal language, and then I get recommendations on how to.
Yep, and further up in the chain too, you get prioritization. So there could
impact.
Yeah, exactly. There could be things that are happening inside of the business that are important, and there are things that are happening outside of the business that are important, and they're all important. But of that, like, how do you prioritize which ones you focus on?
Well, so like I'm a CEO. We've got every ounce of the business is different for every executive, right? So how do you parse that up? Is it based on user?
Yeah, it's based on user and an analysis of the business based off of the data. So
interesting.
Things can be happening that are going to impact revenue, and things that are going to happen can impact margin. Which one for you is the most important between those two choices with the limited time you have?
So can we train and tune our signals? How does that work? Maybe have both of you kind of tap into this one.
Yeah.
How do you make signals? How do you take noise and reduce noise to create value that signals is impactful? Because there's just a lot to know. There's a lot to do.
So the personalization of your business and of your role is like a first layer of importance. If you're the CEO of a banking company and you are reading news about something that is happening to a zoo, that is then noise, because you can't make decisions off of that, and you've spent time on noise. So being able to have it hyper personalized to the business that you're in and the role that you're in is a first layer. Something that's really exciting that we're introducing is the ability to also absorb external documents about board commitments that public companies are making, to help provide that as an accountability lens to the decisions, as well as the ability through documents to be able to tell the system, like, what are your goals for the next 6 months? What are your goals for your role over the next year?
Could I have it look at
those lenses?
Competitors?
You could have it look at competitors and
Could
suppliers.
I have it look at customers? Yeah, exactly. So you can feed it things to tune it to kind of tell it, I want more of this or less of this.
Yeah.
What about contextualization of different things as well? In data sets, there's data quality issues across the entire planet. We've spoken with a lot of customers. My favorite quote comes from one of the largest banks on the planet. And they go, we've tried to clean our data for the last 5 years. We're giving up on that. It's not possible. And it's like, did it get better? Yes. Are we there yet? No. Will you ever? No, we will never be there. So what does that mean? Like they said that to us on a call where they're looking at Snowfire. And so I had to ask that next level question, which is, why are you telling us that? And they're saying, we are not going to ever be done cleaning our data. We have to take on AI transformation now. We cannot wait. And there never will be a point where our data will be clean enough for us to feel any better about that. But we cannot wait on going in the direction of AI. Our business cannot wait. So this is kind of like an impetus. So I'm bringing this up because one of the things that I think is really interesting out there is dirty data systems almost everywhere. Every business has them. Can you make dirty data better with this type of a feature so that a signal is a worthy signal? The contextualization has been done on higher fidelity data. This becomes this this life cycle of quality where signal and noise are understood by a system like ours, so that the signal is actionable and undeniable. Is that what you're talking about with a signaling system like this? Is headed in that direction?
Yeah, absolutely. The dirty data problem is a big one, and it's really interesting because it tends to come down to people and process that input dirty data into a system. Or you have subject matter expertise that's tied up into one person about the naming conventions and the type of data that goes into a certain part of a business system that they don't want anybody to look at. And instead they need to fuse information. And being able to provide context to an AI of don't look here, look here, or this is why we've made the decisions to create these columns and rows and put data in this way, is all part of that kind of tuning of the system to provide better signal.
Well, and there's custom fields in almost every application on the planet, right? So, how does the AI learn what is a standard schema, standard field versus custom fields? How does that become? Can you signal from custom fields, right? Is that something that we can do? Like, this is the nuances that make the knowledge competency of what we're doing for individual customers really interesting, right? Can you talk a little bit about kind of signaling from different fields and customization of data sources and how that also works in kind of signals? Can you talk about how we've engineered that for the listener today? What is a field that's coming from a data source they've added that is custom, and how could that become signaling? How does that become actionable? Talk a little bit about that, if you would. How do folks understand what we've built?
Yeah, we have a process that does vectorization of documents like that and can contextualize what it means to have a custom field in the first place. Within that field, we can interrogate what the values are and determine whether or not this is something that is a valuable field or if it's just a junk field that your supervisor is making you jump through a hoop. Those fields are also fully aware and available to the agents that are responsible for metrics. So when it circles back to a signal, it may say, okay, well, this actually has a high potential impact on this particular metric that comes out of a custom field. And therefore, it's something that you should pay attention to because that field indicates, error rate or lawsuit rate or some important thing that you didn't necessarily have as a core competency in that underlying platform.
That's awesome. So what you're really saying here is that Snowfire even gets to know the nuances of your data layer. That's really cool. Okay.
It's an expert in them.
Yeah.
I like that even better. I don't have much time. I hear that a lot from executives. I'm running out of time. We've got too much data. We've got too much responsibility and accountability we've already agreed to. I don't even know what questions to ask. I don't have enough time. Matt, this is probably for you in terms of how we guide through that. How do we take the power of the Snowfire platform, centralizing our customers' data, and then giving them time back? How do we help them take that leap to understand why you cannot wait any longer to do this?
Anytime we're talking about time, that's where we are today, right? So you can, I think time is, I know we're talking imagination is a new currency, but time is, it's up there, right? Ultimately with being able to harness something that's going to be able to be that personalized intelligence with you, and to be able to answer the questions that are going to be able to pull you back into the things that matter most, that you can't really put a dollar sign on it. It's massive. It's a massive opportunity. And I don't know if that's where the question you were trying to lead with, or because I think with the whole point
it's
of
something we get asked a lot, right?
Yeah.
Which is like, can I get my time back? Will AI help me get my time back?
Well, I guess maybe I'll answer it in a different way. And I think it's kind of a theme that we've talked about, right? Is that this doesn't take any engineering, as we defined. It takes so much information that we're scraping through the internet. We are scraping our own internal data sets as well to be able to provide that outcome to allow you to decide what you want to do for your decision. That's a very powerful thing that we labeled that Snowfire. And so when I think of that time saving opportunity, it's going to put you in a position to work work more effectively. I guess that's where I would want to go with it.
Yeah, I personally, I feel squeezed myself, squeezed in every aspect of business. New baby, very smart young man that I want to spend time with, and he's pretty much the coolest dude I know. A wife that I love being with. There's like our personal things, and we have the ability to get time back and do some of those personal things. But like, if you look at the shift in business, Snowfire runs Snowfire. So I was on a trip recently, and these guys didn't get a call from me at the end of a Friday after I had taken the day off. I took a Friday off. Shame on me, right? I took a Friday off, and I didn't call you guys, right? I went into the system, and I asked the questions that I had of the business. How did we do this week in engineering? What happened in the product in terms of our customers and use? What happened in terms of our pipeline and our growth? Like, I didn't have to do anything. I didn't have to call you guys at 7 p.m. on a Friday while you're having dinner with your families, and I had my questions, right? This is kind of the world we're moving into. So I got time back because I could do that very quickly. You all got time back because, quite frankly, that's not the right thing to do. My need for knowledge now does not surpass your need for family time on a Friday, right? There's these kind of cool things that happen, right? Mm-hmm. Now, if the culture was different here, that would have been a different scenario, but we have a platform that does that. So what's really cool here is that we're getting time back for those kind of things. But here's how I see it. I get time back now to do building, to do customer work, to be more creative, to do content. Mm-hmm. I get to do things a little bit differently with more time back. We get to see how healthy our business is. We get to see things that are important to us as they're happening, signals. And we get to make decisions with deep layers of contextualization, mm-hmm. each of us. It's really kind of a cool thing.
Yeah, and you think about the impact that time savings has as you scale up. Like we're a small team, but if you have an executive team of 30 people, we're very highly paid. Every single week, go through a process of reviewing metrics and where are we headed, what are we going to do. They spend a lot of time in expensive meetings saying like, well, this metric isn't calculated right. I don't agree with this yet. Why don't you work on that over the next week and let's re-review it next Monday. And then next Monday, it's still not exactly perfect. And so you start to extrapolate the amount of time that's spent in those types of conversations where executives need something very specific and they give feedback and, across multiple executive teams that are all just kind of observing and watching this feedback process. Like there's a lot of leakage in time that something like this can solve for that starts to scale very, very quickly for customers and executive teams.
Okay, we are close to the end here. This has been an amazing conversation. We've gone on the journey of what it looks like to build Snowfire into your business. We've talked about why and what it does as an impact. We've really talked about some amazing things. In every podcast, every interview that I do, I have two questions that I always ask. What's your favorite metric and what's your favorite feature? So we're going to end with some features because the world does speak in features. We want to say we speak in outcomes, but we kind of speak in features. So let's have some fun with this. So Matt, we're going to start with you. What is your favorite Snowfire feature?
My favorite Snowfire feature is being able to ask the complex question now. The fact that you can go in and get to the answer as quickly as possible and make decisions faster. That's pretty. You'll become a data nerd after it.
So the Snowfire makes you a data nerd?
Yeah, it does. I think that might
awesome.
need to be a tagline, but it allows you to think not about the initial question, as we talked about, cascading those questions down and getting to a point where you're like, where I started this question, now I'm at this point where it's so powerful. And I think so. I think that's where I would probably say my favorite feature is being able to ask a question that's going to lead you into something so much more impactful.
I love that. That's awesome.
My favorite feature is the metrics feature. Having spent many a night hashing out SQL statements that are large and complex and completely esoteric, I don't want to spend any time doing that. I want it to be done for me.
Yeah.
And to be able to go from connection of a data source to hundreds of metrics within a few minutes, that's the type of time that is saved for me, that I can be creative and use my imagination to make new features and new value for the business.
That's awesome. Yeah, the engineers that are listening, they're right there with you on that. Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so that was ask any question anytime and realize the power of language turned into intelligence. That was I get a ton of time back because I never have to build another metric. I don't have to stay in the data layer. I can literally have metrics at my fingertips without having to ever build them again. Mm-hmm. Awesome.
My favorite feature is the ability for the product to meet me where I'm at through an integration with Slack and Teams. We are all inundated with new, really awesome software applications, so much SaaS on the planet, but it's just another thing that I have to remember to log into to gain access from. So, messaging platforms are something that I'm in all day, every day. Slack has succeeded in getting me off of my addiction to email as a communication platform, for better or for worse. But I like the ability to start to get signals and access the system, the brain, without having to open up a browser all the time and remember to log in and go someplace else and manage more passwords and credentials. Meeting me where I am is I think a very cool feature.
I love that. Everyone's at different places, right? And so the ability to put that at your fingertips that's a great answer. I love that. These are tough to beat, you guys. I think I'm going to give you the answer that is most relative to me and my time. I use Snowfire mobile a lot. I'm always on the go. And so like I did here today, to be able to pull up the phone, press the audio button, ask a question, and to get incredible answers. And we have every data source that we have in our company loaded into Snowfire, from sales and marketing to social to advertising to analytics to website to finance to engineering and beyond. Patent data, it's all there. So for me to pull up my mobile device, click the audio and say, hey, I need to know about this right now, and I get an answer back, and I say, wow, that's really interesting, and I can pivot into your multi-question functions. Okay, that's interesting, but I really want to, now that you've given me that, I really want to know more about this, and to continue to pivot through the labyrinth of information is just incredible for me. And I used to have to go and build dashboards and run reports and log into 50 different systems to get individual answers. Then I'd have to, it's just, that is too much. That is so not the new vibe.
Yeah,
right?
Sounds like your favorite feature is peace of mind.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. It's relative to time, speed, accuracy, but all of that, when you realize that you've used it a lot, peace of mind. I know it's available to me. So much so that when you look at your phone, where is the Snowfire application stored? Mine is right next to text messages. Right? It's like literally there. So
Same.
Snowfire mobile for me is my favorite. But it's not just Snowfire. It's like the power of Snowfire mobile, made mobile, right? So, guys, I've really enjoyed today's conversation. Fantastic insights from the product and the experience. and kind of where we're headed, and fantastic engineering outcomes of what these engineers on the planet, they want to build these things. I don't think that they know yet what they're undertaking to do that. Wonderful engineering outcomes. Imagination is the new currency is the quote of the day. I love that. It's a beautiful quote.
Website too.
Yeah. And then as we look at growth and what customers are seeing and saying, and how we're able to take intelligence to grow the company, that's really powerful. So guys, I've really enjoyed the conversation today. Thank all three of you for being here, and thank you for being a part of the company and where we're headed. And more importantly, thank you for the investment that you've made to bring it to where it is today and where we're headed. It's about to be a really interesting ride. I mean, we're growing very quickly, and what you and your families are putting into the business is also as equally important. So thank you each.
Thanks, Greg.
Thanks,
They're
Greg.
rocket ship.
Right back.